December 2nd at about 2:45, and just heading out to put my trail cameras out again. I brought them in the other day and downloaded videos and pictures off them, and I'm just gonna go out now and put them up again. Thought I'd illustrate how I select spots or choose options for where to place them. This is the nicest been out all day. It's been cloudy and dreary and occasional showers most of the day, but it's a bit sunny at times now, still with some dark foreboding skies to the north here, as you can see. Here's our old pond. Still got the ice in it, although it's starting to break up now because it's been 7 or 8 degrees today. Just a beautiful sky right now. We got the sun here on the hills in the pit and clipping the pine trees in the distance, and the dark skies beyond. So as the name trail camera suggests, you typically put these cameras along trails. Now why is that? Well, the reason is pretty simple. It's just because you have a better chance of picking up animals along trails than you do if you just put the camera out in the middle of the woods where it's not on a trail. Because animals are like people in a lot of ways. They or wild animals, I should say, because people are animals, of course. Animals also like to take the path of least resistance a lot of times. They don't want to be bushwhacking through dense brush and tangles and thorns and everything else, so they often preferentially walk and run along trails. So that's why you typically put trail cameras along trails, and that's why they're called trail cameras. Now, even though these cameras are used probably predominantly by hunters, there are a lot of nature lovers or non-hunters that also use them just to get a sense of what animals are living in their areas. And that's what I use mine for. I'm not a hunter. I just like to assess what's out there. So this is one of our more distinct trails that we have on the property. Some of our trails are narrower and have more tangle closer to the edges of the trail. This one's quite wide. You could almost drive a small car along here. But what you're looking for, if I wanted to put a camera on this trail, is you want to have a medium-sized tree that's close to the trail, and that you can point the camera up or down the trail in one direction or the other with a clear view of the trail without intervening bushes and tangles. Because you have to remember that bushes or hanging leaves in front of the trail camera can set them off, as most of them are based on motion detection software, I guess you'd call it. So I kind of like the look of this little ironwood here. It's about 6 or 7 inches across, and I can point the camera northward from here up in this direction where Luna's standing, and there's no obstruction in the way. So I put my one camera here on this hard ironwood. Now what I do is I make sure there's no hanging dead branches like these ones, because they'll set the camera off as well. Scruffy things here I'm going to get rid of too, so they don't blow in the wind. Okay, so there we have a nice clear view of the trail. Now, I've put this one at about 2.5 feet high, and that should be good for getting most types of animals, whether it's small raccoons or squirrels, as well as the larger animals like deer and coyotes that might come through. This is sort of at coyote head level. The other thing you want to watch when you put them on the tree is that you get the angle of the camera up or down correct, because sometimes depending on the shape of the tree, when you put it on the tree, it might be facing somewhat up or somewhat too far down. This here looks good right now. And then the only other thing you want to check is make sure you get the angle up the trail correct, so you can just do micro adjustments to get it facing up the trail. Ideally, you're pointing away from the sun. So here should be good because the sun now is rising over in this direction away, so the camera's facing away from the sun. If you have the camera facing at the sun, sometimes the sun reflections and shadows caused by the sun movement can set the cameras off as well. So now that this is all set up, I'm just going to start it. With this camera, it's quite easy. Just get it on. Then I basically just tell it to go to start camera. Now video. That gives me a 30-second countdown to get out of the way, and then it's active. It's already been set up to do video recording. So that's how I set that camera up. Just gives you a closer look at the setup here. I've just got it strapped around the tree. You want to make sure you have your strap tied in back here. Mine's not really very good. I'd do a better job if I wasn't racing through this, but you don't want the end of the strap to be dangling out. So once I get my trail cameras set up on the trees, I usually leave them for a couple weeks in one location at least, sometimes a month. But I'll often come back the next day after setting them up just to make sure they're working. I can open these cameras up and they both have a viewing screen, so I can tap through the different menus to check the pictures or just to see if any pictures have been taken. That's the main thing I'm looking for when I'm just checking to make sure it's working. Making sure the batteries are okay, although I usually do that before I put them out. So anyhow, just to make sure the cameras are working. And then after that, I may check them just on the screen here once a week just to see if anything new has been captured. But you can basically leave it just as long as it's working and then come back and collect the video card a week or 2 or 3 or a month later, 2 months later, depending what your schedule is and how far away from your home the camera is. These ones today I'll probably leave up for a couple weeks, and then I'll take the cards out and I'll show you what we've got from this day to 2 weeks or so from now. The first camera I've put out on one trail on the northeast corner of our property. Now I'll go over to the west side a bit and put this camera out just to get a bit of a divergence of location. So I've put my other camera on this 10-inch pine here, and it's facing, like the other one, towards the north to be out of the sun's direct influence. And I've got it positioned on one of our more secondary connector trails. It's a short trail that connects to a couple other trails, so I'm not really sure if I'll get much traffic down here. That's the view one way, and here's the view the other way. Now what's kind of nice about pointing in this type of direction is you can see the log across the trail, so if an animal comes towards the camera, it jumps over the log, and that can produce an interesting video if you can get that. Now unfortunately my camera's a little bit a ways from the log. There wasn't a closer tree, but it might get something. Also note here, because the angle of my camera was facing a bit upwards towards the sky, if you know what I mean, I ended up putting a twig behind it just to push it out from the tree a bit, and then it'll cause the angle to be a little more down. So now it should be better angled towards the trail as I want it. Then you just check the angle this way, right or left, to make sure it's lined up with the trail. It looks good there. So I'll just start it up and we'll see what we get in a couple weeks. So if you're interested in doing this kind of scouting, they call, with trail cameras, you'll have to assess the types of habitat you have around your house or wherever you may be able to put the trail cameras, because you may live in a different kind of place. You may have open fields, for example, or you may have a mix of field and forest, or you may have wetland swamp on your property, or some other kind of habitat, and you can find animals in all those habitats, but typically you're going to find a greater range of species if you're in a woods or on the edge of a woodland, as opposed to right out in the middle of the open. But you could find trails through fields near your house, and you might be able to stake a camera on a little metal pole or something, because sometimes trees are not found in such areas, so you have to get inventive in the ways you put your trail cameras out. So a little stake or a wooden pole or whatever, just to place it beside the trail. Again, you'd have to assess whether other people are using those trails, because you don't want your cameras to get stolen or damaged. You can find animals. For example, I put these trail cameras along our fields sometimes too, and those can give you good results as well. I've had fox and coyotes going along the fields, deer, whereas some of the more typical woodland species you won't find out there. I'll just add that there's a whole slew of trail camera brands out there that you can choose from, and a lot of them are not high quality, and even some of the high quality ones sometimes get bad reviews. But I would just encourage you, if you're interested in doing some of this or getting a trail camera and trying it out, read as many reviews online as you can about particular trail cameras. Obviously, you can purchase locally from certain stores, depending where you are, or you can purchase online. I think it's a bit of a gamble, no matter how much reading you do. As I said, some of these trail cameras seem to have less than stellar performance or durability. But these two I've had, one's a Bushnell No Glow, I think it's called, and the other one's a Spypoint. Spypoint's Canadian made. It's a good acting trail camera, it's just got very poor video quality. It only has 12 frames per second video quality, which is really not great. You can see that when I post videos from it. It's almost jerky looking and just not highly defined. So I'm actually probably going to be on the lookout for a better video taking trail camera. I'd like to get a bit more quality in the trail camera videos I take. The Bushnell actually does a pretty good job, but it's a pretty slow reacting camera from a trigger speed perspective, so it's oftentimes the animals are halfway by it before it even starts to record. So there's another thing. There's lots of different things to consider. So there you go, a brief video on the use of trail cameras. I've just touched on some of the main points. There's a lot more to learn about them, and each model has its own characteristics. But if you haven't used one, you might want to give it a try. I think you'd find it kind of neat to experiment with. And as I mentioned, in a couple weeks I'll go around and get the card out of each of those cameras and post the results online.